We reject over 90% of businesses that submit to our marketplace in the hopes of getting a pretty meaningful exit. Now, I don't want that for you. If you're running an e-commerce store and you want to have an absolutely life-changing exit, I want to help you understand how you can put yourself in the best possible position for a seven-figure exit or more. So I'm going to go through all the things from a very high level that you can do right now to starting today that can help you get your business to a much higher valuation and make buyers salivate to acquire your brand. So let's get into it. This is the exact same advice I've given to many of my customers, which has led to us successfully selling over 2,000 businesses valued at $500 million. That should be pretty enticing to you. Let's go make you some money by helping you make a better e-commerce brand. So what's the problem? Why do buyers not want to buy your store? Well, there are mainly three fatal mistakes that store owners tend to make, and I see it kind of over and over again. And the big one is the most tedious one to fix, but it's okay. You can hire someone to help you fix it, is messy financials. Messy financials scare away buyers, and e-commerce is a financially kind of complex business. You got a lot of different things going on your P&L. So that's one, messy financials. The second one is operations that rely too heavily on the owner. And that's not just an e-commerce thing, that's an everything thing. If you want to sell a business, you should be the least valuable player in the business, ideally. Obviously, if you're a solopreneur, that's a little bit of a different scenario, but in general, you want to make yourself the least valuable person in the company if your plan is to exit that company. Next is customer acquisition costs are just too high. Now, this is tough to control, but there are things we can do. So we're going to get into each one of these things because these three things can help kill your valuation multiplier and honestly kill the entire deal where you don't get anything, where you don't sell your business. Most businesses for sale won't sell. That includes with businesses that list with us. That's just like the nature of the game, right? So let's try to reverse these three killers of your valuation and your exit as best as we can. There is kind of a systematic approach here that we can take that is a pretty easy roadmap for you to follow. So let's talk about the first solution with your operations. So the very first thing you should do if you haven't done this yet is document all your SOPs. You can use Loom videos, you can use the camera recorder technique where you have a video, you have a checklist of things that must be done, and then step by step how to do those things. This way, you can give that SOP to someone on your team and they should be able to do it at least 80% as good as you. Now, I always use the number 80% because no one is perfect and no one will know your business usually as good as you, unless you've grown quite a big business, then your employees probably do know your business better than you. But in general, you want this SOP to be so lined out that you can give it to someone and they can do about 80% as good of a job as you. Next, you should be setting up an automated inventory reordering scheme so that way you don't ever run out of product, or you at least get alerts when things are happening so you can forecast better. I have seen many a valuable e-commerce business that can't sell because they were really bad at forecasting their inventory, and so they had no product to meet the demand that their marketing created. So they're effectively spending all this money driving people to a place where they can't even buy anything at all. Now, you don't want to be in that position. Forecasting is tough. There's probably no perfect system out there for it, but you should have some kind of system that has a high percentage chance of working. And hopefully with your historical data, you can prove that is the case. Now, speaking of suppliers and product, it's a weird world out there right now when it comes to global trade. There's a lot of stuff happening, right? So your best action is to create supplier backup plans. Now, before 2020, most people, they diversified their suppliers by just having multiple factories in China. If one couldn't serve, then another one would do it. This is no longer good enough because while China is great and you can get a lot of great products from China, like all their imports, exports come basically out of the port of Shanghai. So if something happened in Shanghai, it doesn't matter how many factories you have going on in China. And we saw this during COVID, right? With the harbor lockdown, the ports lockdown, all that kind of stuff. So when you're thinking about diversifying your supply chain, don't think, oh, I'm going to have several factories in one country. Think I'm going to have several factories in several countries so I can kind of hedge my bets. And one nice thing by having multiple suppliers is you can kind of have them battle each other to lower their prices. Now, when I say this, I don't mean you try to nickel and dime them to death, because they're business owners too. They need to make a profit, right? So the real way to do this is to reasonably help lower their prices where they are still making a reasonable profit of working with you, because you want them to be on your side, right? If they like you, they will help you to make sure things go smoothly. So we want to make sure that they're still making money, but we can shave some costs by having this. And if something happens, like tariffs on certain countries, then we have backup plans for that, right? So you want to try to diversify your supply chain as best as you can. And there's no perfect way to do this, so do the best you can. Next, you want to have 3PL warehousing. So any e-commerce brand that is scaled at least a little bit probably already has this, though I do still encounter people that are well on their way to 7 figures or even low 7 figures that are technically still shipping a lot of this stuff themselves. If you own your own warehouse and are like, that's great from a vertical integration standpoint. It can make things a little bit more tricky to sell versus 3PL. So if you want the cleanest way to sell your business, use a 3PL, because that 3PL's contract terms are all transferable usually to the new owner, and the buyer may look at your warehouse and they might be okay with it, right? But they might look at your warehouse like, man, I don't want to be beholden to the person I'm giving all this money to, right? So there is a little bit of a tricky scenario there. But if you're also going to sell the warehouse with your e-commerce store to that buyer, then, it's not the biggest deal in the world. All right, let's talk about financials. And this is, at least in my view, the most tedious part of everything. And I think a lot of you can probably relate to me, because entrepreneurs, we tend to be creative, right? And all over the place, engines of chaos, if you will. So we're not exactly spreadsheet jockeys usually. One of the first things you want to do is probably hire a bookkeeper, a bookkeeper that understands e-commerce, right? But the second thing you want to do is switch from a cash basis accounting, where you see money going in, money going out on a monthly basis, to an accrual form of accounting. Now, you don't need to do this if you're not ready to sell yet, but as you are getting closer to selling, I would highly recommend that you do an accrual-based accounting. What accrual-based accounting does is it shows true performance of a business. So I'll give you an example. If I was doing cash basis accounting at Empire Flippers and we just spent $20,000 on an event sponsorship that won't happen for 3 months, that $20,000 in the cash base happens in the quarter that I did it in the month and the week that I did it in, which if I was selling the business in, say, 3 months before that event ever happened, that expense would count against my valuation. Versus if it was an accrual and I spent that $20,000 this month for an event that's happening in 6 months, that $20,000 doesn't appear to hurt my valuation. It doesn't hurt my income, because it is technically a future expense that the value has not yet been realized. So the value of that would be realized in 6 months when the event actually happens, and what came of it, now it would go against the profit. Now that's a very basic idea of how accrual works, and this can get a little bit complicated, especially with the e-commerce store. So I do recommend that you hire a professional bookkeeper, specifically one that understands e-commerce, to help you out to do this, or an accountant, right? The other thing is you want to match your revenue with those expenses. Now, I know a lot of people, especially American sellers, they do a bunch of different things to kind of lower their tax bill, which, hey, I get it, but you want a way to ratify that, to make these things line up, especially if you are a multiple 7-figure brand. There is a high chance that someone's going to come and want to use an SBA loan to buy you, and then the SBA is going to be like, hey, wait a second, these profits don't match with the taxes, right, that you're claiming, because you want to sell your business for the highest amount, right? But when you're talking to the tax man, you're making no money. So like, which one's true, right? So you need to find a way to have a happy medium here when it comes to selling your business. And this just opens up your pool of buyers by doing this. It is a hassle, but again, that's why I recommend hiring someone. The next thing is cleaning up your books in general. You should have inventory lines in your P&L that's SKU by SKU. Now, I recommend having a revenue SKU by SKU line and a profit SKU by SKU, and even a margin, like a profit margin per SKU, because buyers often want to look at not the performance of just the overall business, but your entire inventory. What is good stuff? What is dead weight? All that kind of stuff. Now, if you do this early enough before you sell your business, you will probably find, as a lot of my friends find when they do this exercise, like, wow, I am not making as much money as I initially thought. There's like all these SKUs I have that just aren't pulling their weight. They're dead weight, right? And this allows you to liquidate it, stop investing in those SKUs, and investing in other SKUs that are making you good money. So that's my financial stuff. Hire a bookkeeper. You should definitely have a professional do that for you. Next is customer value. What do we do here? Rising ad costs, complexity of the market, competition in the market. How do we get more value out of our customers? Which is how you solve the rising ad cost problem, right? We can't really do much about rising ad costs. There are tweaks, there are methods, there are strategies. But the ultimate thing we really want to do is increase the value we have per a customer. So there's a bunch of different things you can do if you haven't set up this stuff yet. A lot of it's e-commerce 101. So if you're 7 figures, you probably already have some of this stuff, but some of it might be new to you. So the first thing I recommend is setting up post-purchase email sequences that get them to buy other things, or start doing UGC for you, user-generated content that you can use as testimonials that you can share across social media to bring more customers to you. Next is creating a loyalty program. These are fantastic because it makes people bound to your brand more, because the more they use you, the more loyalty points they get, which of course means the more they use your brand, use your products, right? Next is bundling complementary products together. When it comes to e-commerce SEO especially, I see this going gangbusters. People are basically creating a bunch of different product bundle pages for the keywords that they're targeting on Google, and it converts like crazy. And I think it will also convert for you with other marketing channels too, if you are not already doing these bundle pages. Next is implement subscription options. Now, this won't work for every e-commerce business out there. I know we all love MRR, we all want that, but it doesn't work for every product. Like, the thing you really want is something that is consumable, something that gets used up upon use, or something that needs to be, replaced in a routine kind of way. This type of product, yes, you can do subscriptions relatively easy. There is another way of doing it too, like companies that send out like unique perfumes once a month, or like a sample pack of all of their other perfumes, and it's like unique stuff from around the world. That can work. The issue with that, in my view, is it's way more labor intensive. So be careful before you go down that route. Really research it to see if that's something you want to do. All right, so now let's talk about my personal favorite thing when it comes to marketing. And this is, if you are really good at this one thing, then all the rest of your marketing will just sing better and you'll convert more customers, even if you get less clicks. And that is conversion rate optimization. So a few ways you can take the same amount of traffic and convert them to a higher amount of customers is simply by adding social proof. That UGC stuff from your post email sequences, use that on your actual store in as many places as you possibly can. Optimize those product images not to just be standalone products, but customers actually using the product with videos of them excited about using the product, all that kind of good stuff. Of course, there's all the classics like improved site speed, mobile optimization, all that good stuff, but those aren't as important as you may think. What's more important is the actual offer. So I like to have the offer, then the angle of the offer, then the actual written words or the video sales letter that describes that offer as the 3 main tiers of how I'm testing something for CRO. And then I'll go into things like images, right? But it's really the offer. If you have a killer offer, even with bad marketing, you're going to convert better. Other things on CRO that you can test is simply your add to cart button placement. Test those in different areas. You can use heat maps like Crazy Egg. I think Microsoft Clarity is pretty good as well these days. There's probably a few e-commerce specific ones you can do, but you can see where people are clicking and then put that add to cart button right there where the heat map is showing you. People really want to click right here, right? So that is an easy way for you to test that. Also, your checkout flow, you should be having upsells, downsells, cross sells, and order bumps. So if you're not familiar with the concept of an order bump, I have a friend, he used to sell sponges, and on his checkout page, you can go buy 1 sponge and then ask, would you rather buy 5? Would you rather buy 10? Or would you rather buy like 100 sponges? And when I first heard this, I thought, like, what kind of psychopath is buying 100 sponges in one go? That's a lot of sponges for someone to buy. But he would have people go and buy it, because at the end of the day, some people, they like hate shopping for sponges and like, hey, I'm going to get 100 sponges so I don't have to do this for a couple years again, right? So always have a premium option, always have a cheap option and a premium option. Most people will buy your average option, and there will be a solid percent. I think it's usually around 20% of people will buy the cheap option, and 10% which will buy the premium option. But those 10% can make massive margins for you. Most people do not include a way for someone who wants to buy the best or buy the most as an actual option in their checkout page, and they frankly lose money because of that. So definitely want to optimize that checkout flow for all of those kind of customer avatars. And of course, just like you do with your button placement, you want to test different product page layouts. And again, heat maps are your friends on this. You can do a lot of work with heat maps, and a good designer / developer. So I highly recommend doing CRO. CRO is kind of like the foundation these days of getting more for your money spent. So ad costs might be rising, but if you can increase your conversion rate, then your overall customer acquisition cost will go down, which, what does that do? Increases your valuation when you go to sell. So there you go. Those are the three main things: your financials, your operations, and how do you convert more customers to have more lifetime value. If you do all of this, you will discover a lot of things about your business that you thought were good that are not that good. And you'll have a chance to improve them and see that increased cash flow. And when it comes to a buyer looking at your business, you will look like a less risky business because you've done all this stuff. And one of the things that buyers buy is growth, but one of the things buyers will pay a premium for is safety. So if they view your business as less of a risk, they are more willing to give you a premium valuation that may just change your life. And if you want to start that process, go ahead, click the link down below in this YouTube video and sell your business with us today. Talk to you soon.